What's up, y'all? I hope you're ready. If you've been doom scrolling at all, I'll wait for the song. It's my plug-in track. If you've been doom scrolling during someone's talk, this is the one that you can't. Not that you can if you want to, but I'm gonna do so fast. This is a tik-talk. I'm gonna do like 1 minute per slide. I'm assuming you're like, CSS has new features? Oh goodness. And I'm like, there's a lot of them and there's so many of them. I'm just gonna keep going through and we're gonna try to do 25, it might even be 27. And if I'm being really honest, the sub-trees of things that I'm showing you, it's like 100 new features in 25 minutes. You can find it all there. So I want you all to do this. This is an AI conference. When you ask for something from AI, you're not using the verbs and the terms that you're gonna see here today. And it's not gonna give them to you. It's probably responding with Tailwind. And maybe you learn a lot from Tailwind's documentations. I think that's great. However, this talk is, I want you to see that things are capable, and I want you to learn the words so that you can go ask for it so that your apps and your designs can be better than your competition because they don't know these words. All right, my name's Adam Margall. I'm gonna continue on. So first off, check out that slide transition. That's CSS, and those are full URL changes. And that's because of page transitions. Let's see if my little tool is working. Command F. Yeah, look at this. So this, if you do one thing, you put this in your style sheet right now, and you have a multi-page application, so not a spa, but if you have a multi-page application, you crossfade your user's navigation. They'll click a link, crossfades to the next page. Clicking it, crossfades to the next page. One line of code, there it is. And it's just instant, kind of smoother, better experience. And it gets better though. You can kind of tell things to persist if you like. So maybe you have a side nav, you have a navigation bar, you want that to persist across navigation so it stays frozen. It looks like a spa, but it's actually not. You can do that, you can just persist things. And the same thing that you give it a name, it's like a unique name, that's how the browser knows on page 1, page 2, it's in the same spot, I won't move it. But if it's in a new spot, the browser will automatically move it for you. So I'm gonna go to my website, because it's got view transitions on it. I'm gonna click this link right here, and it's gonna smoothly go into the previous position. There's view transitions all over here. Let's see if I think, oh, that's not one. Anyway, so that was one view transition that we can check out. Also, these slides are using view transitions. So that's what I'm talking about. You just give it a name, you put that little CSS tag in there, and now as you manipulate the DOM or you change your pages, you can do it. And I'm gonna show you one cool trick too. I'm gonna open up DevTools. I'm gonna go down here, I'm gonna go to Animations. Someone's already like, there's animation tools? Yep, and I'm gonna slow it down to 10%, and I'm gonna go to the next page by clicking this link. Thank you for the oohs and ahs. I really appreciate that. I think it's cool, but I'm a nerd. So here's another thing about CSS. There's range syntax, because I can never remember min width, or is it max width, or when I'm doing a media query, do I want it to be under, over? Whatever, now you could just use this syntax. And look, you got operands right here, right where you want them to be. So you could just say, hey, is width less than 1000 or 1024 pixels? That's great. Then initiate my media query here. You can also do ranges like this. Is it between these two values? And you can use all of CSS's powerful units, and you can say, hey, is it less than 50 characters wide, but greater than 20? Here's the layout I want. And it also works with container queries, which we're going to get into in a second, and you can combine it all together. So you can nest your container queries inside of your CSS nesting, inside of your container, using the range syntax. It's really cool stuff. So just remember that. You don't have to always write min-width and do the colon and the whole thing. You can do it kind of like JavaScript. So let's talk about container queries. Container queries are the way for your component to know that it's in somewhere other than just the browser window. Because that's what we've been doing this whole time. We squeeze our window and then we try to adapt something. Container queries know not only how much space they have, but they know who they're inside of. And they can ask. They can ask either, hey, am I in a sidebar? I'm gonna be a portrait layout. Hey, am I in the main grid of the thing? Then be a landscape layout. And the syntax is easy. You just give it a name. This is the unique name. And you tell it what you're trying to contain. And this, I'm containing inline size, which is the way to describe width when you're trying to take yourself out of the thing you're doing in international layout. You can also say container width is less than 40 characters. It's pretty cool. Here's you referencing one by name. Container, my first container query, what's your width? Are you less than 40 characters? I'm going to adapt. And here's a demo that is, I call it the perfect bento. Now let's just go check it out. I held shift and clicked it, so I was hoping that followed. Yeah, here we go. It's just called the perfect bento because no matter how many items are in it, it's always going to have a good layout and in portrait or landscape. So I'm using view transitions. This is the JavaScript API of view transitions. And I'm going to tell the browser, hey, I'm going to add a box. And then I add a box, and the browser does all of the morphing and all the animation between the old layout and the new one. So really cool right off the bat. View transitions are more than just cross pages. You can use them in JavaScript. So I'm going to add boxes, add boxes. It's always a great bento. I can go back down to here. I can put this in a landscape. And so I'm using CSS container queries to ask, are you in a portrait or a landscape layout? And how many children do you have? Your elements can know how many children they have. It's called a quantity query, which is kind of aptly named, I feel like. So anyway, I combine a few things together. Now I have a grid that can take any sort of items on the home page, and it always looks beautiful and didn't have to use JavaScript. CSS is just handling all of it for us. So container query is really cool. They also come with units. So you can specify, hey, have you ever been burnt by like 50% height? You're like, 50% height, and it goes, man, I don't know what that is. And you're like, yeah, you do, CSS. You do know. And so you could just say 50% CQB or CQH. CQB is the block size, and then you have H as the height. 50 height of my container. It's going to be exactly what you want. So container query units can get you really far in a lot of cool ways like that. Cascade layers, if you're ever loading in third-party styles, if you ever have asynchronous styles hitting the page, if you've ever managed an index.style that just had all this really meticulously imported items that have to be imported in that way or else the whole thing breaks, I present to you Cascade Layers, where you can define pre-made little areas of your style sheet, and then as whatever comes in, whenever the styles come in, you just stick them right into the spot that you needed them to. So in this case, I made a design system layer, a components layer, and a utilities layer. Utilities will always win over top of these. Components will always win on the design system. So you create this healthy layer, and then you just start importing stuff, whether it's from JavaScript or CSS. So in CSS, I go, hey, import some third-party library and put it in the design system. Import my components, put them in the components area. Notice that you can do nested ones also. We've also got components. Oh, look at how the scrolly, see how it highlights and does that? That's a whole other CSS feature I'm not even going to go into. Those are called scroll state queries. So it actually, you know when you're snapped, you know when you're stuck. So it's just like a side thing. This little layout here is all CSS also, no JavaScript. So here's a layer that I'm creating a layer and putting stuff inside of it at the same time. If that layer already existed, it just depends onto the previous layers. So your components can say, I'm always going to be in the components layer, and that thing, the way the thing that imported it doesn't have to put it in them. Anyway, there's a lot of really cool orchestration, and it takes a lot of the async workout and the third-party workout. Because if you think about like a third-party scripts or styles, you always put them at the top, right? Because you want to win. My styles need to come after that one, because otherwise it's a competition. If you use Cascade Layers, you can say, hey, all my third parties, they go right up in here into this little group, and all my styles are here, and no matter how these things, and where and when all the styles go into that third-party area, it doesn't matter. Your styles will always win over top of this because of the order that you created with your Cascade Layers. Don't sleep on that one, it's really cool. So here's field sizing, a little innocent, property and value. Field sizing content, I don't really know what that means. Yeah, well, let's go take a look. So here is what we were doing before we had field content. I've got a input that doesn't grow. I have a select element that's always the length of its longest item. So even if I select high, it's huge, drives me nuts. This one doesn't grow when I type on it. This email doesn't grow when I type on it. This number thing doesn't grow. Nothing works as I kind of want it to do this. How much JavaScript have you written to get that? I'm sure it's a lot. Look at this one, shrinks to fit. That's like really hard to do, even with JavaScript, because you don't know. If I did 2-letter M's there, it's wider than 2-letter I's. So is your JavaScript going to count characters and be like, are you an M or an I? Let me do this. Anyway, or you can just do this. This one always fits the amount of options that are in it. I can grow this text based on what's inside of it. I can grow this email based on this number. Anyway, you get it. So visuals, they help a lot. That's a really simple property value, a lot of cool implications. Now, however, if you noticed, it also is the width of the placeholder text, or when you empty it, it becomes very empty. So you have to add some defensive styles. Make sure it's like a minimum of 5 characters, a height of 3-line height, in this case, a text area. You don't want it to be like less than 1. So anyway, there's some defensive styles you can say, like never shrink below 5 characters. I think that's pretty good for an input. That'd be pretty annoying if it only, you hit delete and it's like 1 character wide. Anyway, I lose my slides. That's cool. What's this demo? I forgot. Oh, this one's just a pretty version. Saying, hey, look, it's pretty. Look, it's okay, whatever. Let's burn on. So this is color scheme, so light and dark. When you make a website and you just start writing styles, you're also working with the user agent style sheet. It's a browser-provided style sheet that does some basic styling. Did you know there's a dark version of that? You just write one style like this, color scheme, light, dark, and the browser will supply you a dark version when the user's in a dark mode? Bet you didn't, but now you do. So anyway, you can tap into that by saying, my site enables light and dark. And you just say, light and dark. And then what you get though is you get this rad function that will always return the light item or the dark item. So if they're in light mode, it'll do this color. If it's in dark mode, it's that color, which means I can make an entire responsive light and dark system with just these few lines of code. And it nests and does all sorts of cool things that are really difficult to do. So here's auto, which is I'm in light theme on my browser. So I'm going to go to the dark mode. This is the dark browser style sheet. All I'm doing, look at the styles here. I'm using the has selector, which has a lot of cool names. I'm not talking about has today, but if you don't know what the has selector is, it's really cool. It's also a way to do quantity queries. But here, look, by default, you can be light or dark. Just see what the user wants. Hey, if they checked the light mode, then set color scheme explicitly to light. And that sets the browser says, I'm going to deploy the light style sheet. And you can say dark, get the dark style sheet. So if we move on to more about light and dark, so we talked about it basically a little bit, but you can use it anywhere colors are used. So here's a dynamic light and dark border color based on whatever the current theme is. You don't even have to care. And here is a fully adaptive 2 surface colors, 2 text colors design system that has light and dark mode in just 4 lines of code. So let's check it out. Here's the nesting thing. If anyone writes Tailwind, you know that it's one of the great values of having light and dark classes is you can have a light component inside of a dark component, inside of a light component, inside of a dark component. And doing that without classes or on your own, it can be kind of difficult. And here it just becomes really easy. We've got a dark and a light, we set the color scheme, and then our functions take care of what the value is at the time of drawing. Really cool stuff. What's this one? I don't even remember. Oh, it's the same thing, except that you can use color scheme to do, who cares? Check it out later. The borders were a different color. You're like, what? Anyway, it's too hard to explain. It's really valuable, though, the fact that you can use it in more than just a couple scenarios. So here's accent color. This one is also best just seen. I could talk about it. You saw the property value. So here's the default tint of your inputs in the browser. You can just change them. So you don't have to redesign every single input just to bring your brand color in. You just tell it what your brand color is, which I think was on the slide before. Yeah, accent color hot pink. Hey, take that slider and I want it to be filled with black goo. Which I think, is that this demo? Yeah, but this one also uses some cool spring easing, and then I take the value of it, and I put it in a gradient, and then I power the gradient with some spring easing, and then it does a blend mode on top of that. It's just simple little stuff, but it looks cool, I think. That looks pretty sweet. That one I'm not going to skip. Okay, so anyway, TypeScript is cool. I like types. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. TypeScript is cool. Did you know that the CSS is type safe in the browser at runtime? It is. What happens when you put a pixel where a color goes? Does it go, I can't draw anymore. I'm like JavaScript where I just fall over, you tried to assign me. No, it just burns on, right? It takes the last known valid value. It's kind of brilliant in its concept. So what app property does, remember var? You make a var, you can be like, hey, var, you're equal to string hello. And then later you're like, var, you're equal to number 42. And then later you're like, var, you're equal to an object. And everyone's like, it was cool at first that we had loose variables, but then we kind of want some strict typing. We want to be more confident in things. So same thing with CSS variables. CSS variables, put whatever you want in them. Data doesn't care. It's a loose typed variable. However, you can now type safe your variables. And not only do they become type safe, meaning that if you try to set them to something that they're not ready for, they'll take the last known value. You can interpolate them. You basically can get this concept of a little scalpel, and you can take this one custom property and be like, I'm going to animate you from 0 to 100%. The browser couldn't do that before because it was a loose typed variable, and it was not confident that somewhere between 0 to 100% it could turn into a string again. When you type safe it, the browser will do all sorts of cool superpowers to help it. So this one is a type of color. I give it a name. You can give it an initial value. That's why it has a guaranteed valid value at all times. Here's one, it's a percentage. You can set whether they inherit or not. I'm not going to go into that, but it's actually a really cool feature. And here's me transitioning one. So on hover, I'm going to go from a percentage that was 0 to 100, and I'm going to use that in a transition anywhere I want. So when that hovers, this custom property goes 0 to 100. You take that custom property and you stick it somewhere cool, and you get a hover animation in all sorts of CSS ways. Here's another way with keyframes. So transitions or keyframes, you pick, both of them can be interpolated and they can do cool things. We're not going to play noisy today, but we are going to look at this demo. So I want to hold the Option key, and I'm just animating the percentage of a gradient so that I'm getting a spotlight effect. So it's quite simple, but the idea is this was unlocked with app property because it's a typed variable. Gradients were not very easy to animate. They're still not very, but with app property, you're able to say specifically, I'm animating one color in the gradient. I'm going to animate the position and the strength between the two things because it now can be interpolated. Oh yeah, by the way, down at the bottom here is the browser support for all these features that I keep sharing. So if you're like, oh yeah, what's the browser support? There's always someone that's like, that's cool, what's the browser support? It's at the bottom. And most of these are pretty good. And if they're not good, they're going to be good eventually because it's the web platform, y'all. You're going to have a beard one day, and all these features are going to be available. It's great. So scroll-driven animation, I love this so much. You'll see so many, I put a demo, I was sitting in the pew, bleacher, whatever, I was sitting over there, and I made a scroll-driven animation today because it's so fun. And these, I just want you to know that you can animate on scroll. So this is the entirety of scroll. When you drag the thumb, it's the same thing as when you're in a video editing tool and you drag the track head. Literally, you can map your animation the same way that you map that pull and that pull to the scroll bar and its position. And that's this scroll animation. Now, that's not the only kind that you can do. You can also do a view. And view is an intersection of yourself, my component, as it goes into the scroll port and out of the scroll port. I can animate it as soon as its little head pokes in. And then I animate it, and it goes, goodbye. And that's a view animation, and I'm going to show you a bunch of them because they look cool. And they're just pretty sweet. So this one uses app property to make a hue. So it's like, what hue is it in HSL? And as you scroll, it changes the hue, and I get a nice rainbow animation. Really cool. Look, so here's my custom property. Here's my keyframes. And then when I scroll, I power the animation with scroll. So instead of it being driven by the screen refresh rate, you say, don't just run, fool. I want you to run on scroll. And that's how you do it right there. Okay, so let's check out another one. How am I doing on time? Looking pretty good. This one does a 3D scroll animation. And it's scrolling really cool features that you probably haven't heard of because CSS is it's grown a lot. So yeah, look, we got cosine, overlay, all sorts of cool features in there. And that one is a grid layout that then it's cool. It's really cool. So I'm just going to leave it there, you know. Okay, let's look at some view animations. Is this the slide fade in? I love this one. Okay, look at my keyframes. We're going to come in from opacity 0 with no box shadow. You're going to be scaled down and a little bit translated. Okay, every one of these elements is using those keyframes. But when I talked about the view, each element knows its own intersection in the scroll port. So look, each of them knows when they're coming in and when they're coming out. I get this like natural stagger. I did nothing. There's no duration adjustments. There's nothing in there. They're all just being powered by their own intersection from the 0% to when they're halfway into view. I defined that. And you can set those ranges. It's really cool stuff. What's this one? I don't even remember. Oh, this one is observing somebody else's scroll. So this guy is going to spin when this one's going in and out of the viewport. All CSS. And, oh yeah, look at this intersection observer, goodbye, and I won't miss you. I hate that API. I mean, I love what it does, but it is just so chatty and noisy. I'm like, get out of here with all those intersection moments. I don't want that. Here's one I made that looks like an app switcher. So this is all CSS again. So it's using scroll snap and scroll-driven animations together and gives a really elegant effect. I think you can click them and it navigates. Yeah, see, that's good stuff. Okay, I'm going to skip on. Linear is a way for you to take your easings into the next level. You can make something springy, bouncy, and all sorts of cool effects. I don't expect you to know these numbers. I don't even know how to do those numbers, but I do know how to put them in a custom property and then use them. And so you can see some spring animations like this. Do I need to zoom in on this? Can I zoom in? Yeah, y'all seeing that zoom? See how it kind of bounces in? It's really subtle, and this is how you make your design look a little bit different and more animated than other people, is knowing that you can just change the easing to make it linear and get a really cool spring effect. Here's one that's not, this isn't CSS per se, but it's just a good crowd pleaser, which is, you can put horizontal rules in a select. I think that breaks it up really nice, and all you do is you put the HR right inside of there. Boom, you learned today, and that slide took us 10 seconds. All right, the search element. So you've probably made a lot of search elements, but this one's particularly interesting because it's an official element. This is in the specs. You can see support down here in case you're wondering. And this just makes it easy so you don't have to write all the ARIA labels and do all the decorations that make it accessible. This does it for you. So just think about next time you're building search, just remember there's a search element. Better validation. So previously we've had valid and invalid, which are pretty useful, but now we have user valid and user invalid. And I'm just going to show you these ones also because these need to be seen. So currently, the browser's like, hey, user, that input's invalid. And you're like, hey, browser, I haven't even touched it, man. Why are you yelling at me? That's rude. It's eager to tell me I'm wrong. But look, and there's valid. Valid is also eager to tell me I'm right. Okay, that's cool. So let's get out of those ones and check out user valid. So up here, we have user invalid, and look, it's not angry already. This one's angry already because it's invalid, it's technically empty. But this one up here is waiting for user input to become invalid, or be invalid? How do I make it invalid here? Yeah, I have to blur it. So I blurred it, and then it told me I was wrong, which I think is nice. The user is indicating I'm done, and then it says, well, now you're wrong. Well, you're like, hey, okay, I deserve that one. And then user valid, now I'm gonna have to make a real email. Oh, yep, there we go. And this one was valid once I make, who cares? Okay, anyway, you get it, right? So one is really eager, and one kind of waits for user attention. And you can do all sorts of cool things like add check marks, and anyway. Exclusive accordion, so you know the summary details element, hopefully, it's a really powerful element. Now you can make it when one opens, it closes the others in a summary details, all by giving them the same name. That's it. Just like a radio input, where it makes one radio checked and the other one's unchecked. You know, you get that for free. Now you can do that with an accordion. You can just stack a couple details together, give them the same name. Now when you twirl that one open, you twirl this one collapses, this one opens. Let's just see it, right? Awesome. And the other little hidden thing inside of here is if you're noticing it's animated, you can now animate to height auto. In CSS, there's two things. There's a function called calc size and another one called interpolate. Oh no, it's got a really weird name. I've lost it. Anyone know? Anyone know? If I want to animate height, what's the new little hook you got? Alan, where are you at? Whatever, come see me, I'll remember it. There's too many CSS properties to remember them all. Oh, I keep closing my slides. Here's math. There's all the math that you need. There's trig, there's cosine, there's sine, there's tan, there's pow, there's atan. There's all these things. And now you can make a radial layout and use your, here's another function that's kind of like, well, I guess this isn't the function, but this is saying what, in terms of I'm in 6 different children, which number am I? Because I'm going to use that to rotate myself around a center point. So now you can use cosine and sine, take your current offset, like how far away from the center do you want to be, and just do it, all in CSS. So no matter how many items you have, you'll always get a perfect radial layout. There's all sorts of cool demos in here, and if I have time, I'll go through some of them. There's also, this one's just a teaser slide. These are like CSS functions coming down the line. Also, you know, we talked about CSS is typed. It's a fully typed language. Typed is enforced at runtime. Types in all the spec definitions. So everything in CSS is typed. It's also a very functional language. And these are all pure functions, at least almost all of them. And that's kind of a really interesting feature of CSS. It's not only is it typed, but it comes pre-built with tons of pure functions. So these ones will return you different random results. This one here called sibling count tells you which or sibling index, which is like which number am I amongst my siblings and how many siblings do I have? And then you can use that to create a different background color. So you get this rainbow of color because it just takes your current position, multiplies the hue, and you've got yourself a cool color. Or animation delay. You see that one? You want a cool stagger? You just stagger based on which item you are. Oh, no, don't do that. I hit a key. Yeah? I don't know. Go away. There we go, sweet. There's this one's called progress. Media progress, it kind of tells you how far along values are. We have mix, calc mix, crossfade, transform mix, and first valid toggle and calc size. Calc size was that function I mentioned earlier that goes with interpolate size, allow keywords. Yes? Yeah, thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. All right, and text wrap is another one. So you want to make your kind of like your typography headings look really pretty. Let's check it out. This is a demo that kind of shows you before and after. So there's 2 different ways to have text wrap become more elegant for free. Well, it's not free. You have to ask for it. So this is, again, what I mean. You're not going to get this from ChatGPT. It's not going to be like, you should balance your headlines. It doesn't know typography like that. It can't read and see that there's an orphan, but you can. So here's unbalanced. This is how it is today. And this one's unpretty. So these are just 2 examples. We can see we have orphans. It's kind of loose ragged on the right. We've got a lot of white space underneath there. Typography nerds would be just driven mad right now. They're like, that's not right. So then if we go over here, if you do text wrap balance, you see how it created a line break for you so that it created a block. It does its best to make, which is perfect for headlines, where usually you'd go insert line breaks to get a nice headline. This will do it for you in any language, right? Anyway, and it's responsive. You can animate it. It's cool. Okay, so then this one's pretty. Now, pretty was a little less aggressive. Balance is quite aggressive. Do you see what it's doing? That's like aggressive. You know, look, there's like empty white space over here. And pretty goes, I'm going to do the only little things I need to make sure it's not crappy. And so they called it pretty. You know, makes sense. Anyway, there's some other demos in there. We'll burn on. So color mix, you can now mix colors. I think the most common one people do at first when they're thinking about color mix is making a transparent color. You're like, it's so annoying that I have to have all these transparent colors in my design system. And you're just like, no, now you can actually do them on the fly. And so in this case, I'm lightening a brand color by mixing it with white. In this case, I'm creating transparency by mixing it with transparent. And the percentage there is telling it how dominant is transparency in the mix. So this is quite transparent because transparent is going, again, it's 80% of the strength in there. And you can nest them, so you could put a color mix inside of a color mix inside of a color mix, because CSS doesn't care. It will resolve recursive scenarios like that for you. You know, JavaScript is way more complicated than CSS. I'm like, no, CSS just does the complicated stuff for you. You just wrote it simply and in a way that was easy to read. I'm biased. Anyway, there's color mix demos in there. Maybe we'll get to them. There's also color spaces, so everyone has a phone in their pocket that's got an HDR screen. Better blacks, better whites, better high-powered colors. Those are HDR colors. Well, and there's like a variety of kind of terms I just breezed over. But anyway, just know that CSS can now access these brighter colors and these richer colors, and it can interpolate gradients within those spaces. I think there's even, let's test the screen. Oh, wait, those are all the syntax. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so if these all look the same color, it means, oh, this one's HDR. Do we see it here? No. Okay, hold on. Do we see that one? Yeah. Okay, so this is orange to what you've been building all your websites on. I call it VHS. Oh, nice VHS orange you got there. It looks great. Look at my DVD Blu-rays, because those are in HDR. Those are two color spaces that go beyond the orange that sRGB could do. sRGB is just kind of old. Let's see if our yellow's popped. Nope. Green, nope. Blue, no. This is because that display has a limited set of colors it can do, but your phone doesn't. Your computer doesn't. And if you're building a site that's for VHS, then keep using hex colors. You know? Visit my site, get those DVD colors. Anyway. Relative color, this is a way for you to derive and compute colors from other colors. I think about it like destructuring. So look, I destructure blue into LCH, because this is the color space I want to use. I want to use an HDR color space. So I take blue, I break it up into its 3 channels, and then I can do math on those channels. So I calculate, I lighten it by taking the lightness thing, and I increase the lightness. Here, I lighten it to 75. I don't do a calc, I just set it explicitly to something. You can also do transparency this way. You're like, hey, take that blue and just make it 50% transparent. So you don't have to color mix. You can actually break up the color and put it back together in one function. God, that's cool stuff. That's cool stuff. And there's all sorts of relative color demos where you can check the complementary color. You can build really robust color scales that go from lightness. You can hue rotate. Actually, is the hue rotate one right here? No, that's accessible colors, which is really cool. It can kind of calculate those two. Here we go. Like, this is a good example. You pass in a base color, and I can just make any theme that I want out of it. I'm deriving an entire palette off of a base color, which is kind of what design systems have always wanted to do. So then you can also make scroll bars a different color. This one's pink. The most important thing here is that if you are going to change the scroll bar color, I almost always make the track transparent. And even if you have a site right now that you're not changing the scroll bar color, just go set the track to transparent. It'll make it more beautiful. And this is a really cool one. This is called starting style. It says, how should I enter the stage? Where should I enter? And when it says enter the stage, it's when I get to set to display none, I want to animate in. When I'm adding new elements, I want to animate these in. So it's a way for you to kind of like describe on first paint, on first render, or when you're like appearing in the DOM, where do you come from, and then animate to a resting place. It's a really powerful way to kind of get stuff going on. So we have Dialogs now for synchronous blocking UI. We have Popovers for asynchronous UI, and you can animate these things. I have a bunch of CSS kind of like presets in there. You can go steal the code that makes them transition. And then we have anchor positioning, which just hits Safari. So this little widget right here is unfortunately like old. But anyway, it's supported now. Oh, there's my tool. Yeah, I am using that tool. And so this allows you to anchor one thing to another. Let's see if this demo loads. I don't know why it's hanging. Okay, look, I can now anchor a tooltip to the thumb of an input slider with CSS. So I have a little label, I have my input, and I say, hey, label, I want you to attach to the little circle. And you can have it do it. It's really nice. There's all sorts of cool demos, like fly-out menus, where you got one flies out to another, but I'm getting short on time, so I gotta just show you more stuff. Textbox trim is easily shown with just an image as well. Not that one, though. Something like this. This is what we deal with today. We've got this, like, space here, but you can trim that off now. And so now you get perfect alignment with your box and your content. This also works for your buttons. Your buttons now can be perfectly fit. So anyway, thank you. That's a whole bunch of stuff for you to go take to your AI tools and make some bad animations. I hope it wasn't too fast.